Life can change in an instant. For many wheelchair users, the struggle to push forward is a daily challenge.
After years of development and countless prototypes, we created Rib Grips, the revolutionary wheelchair hand rim covers with built-in ribs for ultimate grip and comfort.
No more slick surfaces, no more heat burns, just pure, reliable grip. Rib Grips, empowering you to push forward with ease. Rib Grips, get a grip on your freedom. Discover the difference. Visit ribgrips.com and use promo code GRIP today. You just found the perfect product that helps with staying cool during hot summer runs. No more gross warm water. Stay cool with this product from Gear Handle. This hydration tube cover helps keep your water cool and easily accessible. Stay hydrated during those long summer runs or even delay from freezing in the winter. Plus, they're compatible with various brands of water bladders and come in various colors. Visit gearhandle.com and use promo code H2O today.
Coming up on the Payoff. Last weekend, I had a chance to do something that I never thought I would ever do. I got a chance to go back to my alma mater and talk to student athletes about sobriety, mental health. But most importantly, my wheelhouse is sobriety, because anybody who knows me today probably knows I'm still not mentally well. But my co-pilot on the trip, or should I say the pilot of the trip, was Hilary Phelps. She was the best swimmer in the country. She went to the University of Richmond, and she had a drug and alcohol problem. Today, she's 15 years sober. Together, we're hoping to spread change among student athletes and carry a message of hope and basically plant a seed of awareness to student athletes in college who may not know anything about alcohol or drug addiction. And someday, if they feel like they have a problem, they know where to go. And maybe if they have a problem at the present time and we're talking to them, they can go to us or go to other resources. This is a great convo about an experience I had with Hilary back at my alma mater and something we plan to do more in the future, carrying a message of hope to student athletes who just might need it. But first, Kevin Souza. How you doing? This is great because I get to say, like, hey, it's been 25 years. No, I don't get to say that. It's been a couple days.
Yeah, it had been 25 years, right? Now it's I don't even know what day it is. What's today?
Today's Tuesday. Yeah.
Tuesday. So a couple days, 5 days, 4 days. Yeah, it was good.
So what did you think of? So Hilary and I, to catch people up, and we'll just start now, Hill, if that's all right with you. I know you've got to get a train at Target afterwards, and that's a big deal. But so we got together over the weekend, or I guess Thursday into Friday. We both went to the University of Richmond. You swam. I was supposed to play football, but I didn't because of a heart problem, and part of it that is kind of why we're here. Part of it related to drugs and alcohol. And we had an opportunity to go back and speak with student athletes who are transitioning into professional life about alcohol and drugs and mental health and wellness. What did you think about our program?
I thought it was great. I mean, how it came about too is that you and I had reconnected after, a long time after college on sobriety.
And by the way, so people, I don't know if people really know this. So I guess it was, when was it, May that you joined me on this podcast and you talked about being sober? It was the first time that you had ever mentioned that or spoke, on the record. And we all know you'd been on the record before. So you use this platform to talk about your story, and you've gotten a lot of great feedback, I feel like it's been cool to do this because once in a while somebody will be like, hey, thanks, appreciate it, you're carrying the message, and you got a ton of that type of feedback.
Right, 100%. I mean, I was coming up on 15 years, and I had kind of kept my story a little quiet because I think I still felt a little bit of shame around the stigma, there's shame and stigma around addiction, I think. And I think in women, in both, in men and women, but, and I'd still carried some of that shame, but it felt really good to release it and just speak openly, after 15 years with you about it for the first time. And then what I realized was, and you and I talked about this in the podcast, and I've talked about it subsequently, is that it doesn't matter if there's 3 people that judge. It's the one person that hears something in any message, and whether that's in a 12-step room, on campus, in a podcast, that steers them towards getting help or gets them one step closer to asking for help, whatever that looks like. And so, yes. And so coming on the podcast was a huge deal, and I wasn't sure how it would be received, and it was received really well. And I've received messages and people saying, I struggle, or my mom struggles, or this person, just got sober. Thank you for being the voice. And, I know that you've received those messages as well, from people just saying, thank you for being so open and talking so candidly. And so after that, I think you and I were just talking, kind of just chatting. We're like, we should send this to University of Richmond, where we went, and see, the athletic director, because this is a huge deal in athletes. And that's how we ended up on campus.
How did you receive that type of feedback? Because you have started to kind of move forward with your message after that. Like, there was no grand plan, and really there still isn't, right? As far as like, it's just kind of give back what was so freely given to us. But you kind of take that good reception and you've moved with it, right? You want to continue to do that. You feel a sense of purpose doing that.
Right. 100%. And 15 years ago, there weren't a lot of women speaking openly about it. And there weren't a lot of women like me who had careers, who were moms, who'd been through a divorce, like fill in the blank. Like, there weren't women who had life experiences, that were openly talking about it. And, for me, like, I didn't think I had a problem because I was a wine drinker and I drank champagne and I thought that was classy, or martinis. It was just that once I started, I couldn't stop. But there was nobody saying that that's kind of the definition of alcoholic. And there have been a couple of books written about it, but what I found was that, I think it would have, I would love to be one, just again, like just one person hearing something that would say like, okay, she seems normal. Because I also had the impression that addicts and alcoholics were these weirdos in basements that just talked about God. And that's not, for me, like what getting sober has been about. It's been about, it is about putting down the substances, but it's also about finding your inner voice and finding what brings you joy, and there's so many other things that go into it.
On the level of, you mentioned, and we'll kind of go backwards before we go to the present of what we just did, but you mentioned that, student athletes, and you mentioned something that, you kind of, obviously it's part of your story, right? Being an athlete, being an alcoholic, and now you're in recovery. What do you have to say about that whole situation where, student athletes need this type of support? They need an outlet.
I mean, I think, and I'd love to hear your feedback on this too, from a male perspective, but I think in general, like social media also like ups the ante as far as the level of feeling the need to be perfect,
Yeah.
And when we were in college, thank goodness, right? There's no Facebook or like TikTok or whatever. But I feel as athletes, like the level of success is measured by our output, like that's how we determine good or bad, right? Like if we achieved success today, it's because we beat our time, or we won a game, or our stats were better than the last, whatever. And I think for myself personally, for athletes that struggle with mental health, mental illness, whether it's depression, anxiety, and addiction, like drugs and alcohol can start to look like a self-medication tactic, and for those of us especially in college,
because it looks normal.
Exactly. You can blend in, which is what I found. And that was one of the hardest things when I came out of the University of Richmond, is finding that because everybody was drinking, but I didn't realize that not everybody was drinking like we were.
Yeah.
They weren't blacking out.
Yeah.
They weren't, like they could stop after one, or they would choose to study for a test rather than go out and, get really hammered. And so I think today there's just a level of expectation to be perfect and achievement on student athletes that's greater than anything we've seen before.
What's my Well, it's true. He's adorable. We have, as athletes, and I was in a 12-step meeting yesterday where we talked about this. It's and as people, perfection, right? We have this idea that the people around us are concerned with how we're doing when they're really, most people are concerned about the same thing as far as they, right, are concerned. People are just worried about themselves, but there is a real consummation with that happens with people that are alcoholic. And then with student athletes, you're on a stage where you're being judged. And now, you're seeking, like you said, you're seeking refuge in alcohol or drugs, and it's just compounding. It just starts to tumble. And the key is, and Randy Grimes, who played for the Buccaneers, who's in the NFL, he has a program, I forget right now, but it's basically addicts in recovery that have to do with the NFL and pro sports. And he didn't invent this, but he said something that was music to my ears, and I shared it with the student athletes of Richmond. It's okay not to be okay. And as an athlete, it's really not okay not to be okay. So it's that juxtaposition that becomes something that you're looking to tackle, right?
Right. And good pun, tackle.
Thanks,
with
Al.
the Randy.
Yeah. Don't give me too much credit now. Yeah.
And I think, and we touched on this too when we were talking.
If you have to talk, what's he need? Does he need anything?
He wants me, and it says, "Hi, I'm Siri."
What's up, Siri?
When you transition from being in college, one, you can hide it, right? And two, every single minute of our day was pretty much structured. For me, it was getting up in the morning. Like I had a morning workout, and then I had breakfast, and then classes, and I had a nap, then I had afternoon workout, and then study hall, everything was scripted, and then you could do, drinking. But when I went out in the real world, it was really hard to find structure and put, even though like the time management was, implemented in college because we were athletes and kind of had to juggle and as addicts, I guess we juggled academics, athletics, and addiction.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so getting out of college, that was a huge learning curve of trying to learn, and then eventually whatever you put the energy towards is the one that takes up the most, the most importance. And so eventually, like everything else got kind of pushed out, and the addiction was the one that really, because there's nobody holding me accountable. I don't know if you found that to be true.
Yeah, 100%. And one of the things that preceded us as far as one of the features to the program were, it talked about student athletes. They played a video from, I think it was a swimmer from the University of Michigan. And it just talked about how, and she was somebody who dealt with mental health stuff, depression. But anybody, we'll get back to this conversation in a second. But right now, a word from our sponsors.
From the host of the popular podcast, The Only One in the Room, Stash by Laura Cathcart-Robbins is a propulsive and vivid memoir about the journey to sobriety and self-love amidst addiction, privilege, racism, and self-sabotage. Best-selling author Holly Whitaker calls it an irresistibly delicious story, and MacArthur Foundation fellow and best-selling author Kiese Lehman says Stash is emotionally riveting. Buy Stash by Laura Cathcart-Robbins now, wherever books are sold.
The world looks different behind the handlebars of a rad electric bike. Grabbing takeout looks less like greasy styrofoam boxes and more like a cross-town adventure. Ride shares look less like piling into the back of a car and more like grabbing fresh air with your friends. And commuting can even start to look like the best part of your day. That's because with RAD, the world is what you make of it, not what it makes of you. See for yourself with a 14-day free trial. Find your fun at radpowerbikes.com.
The all-new Chevy Colorado is made for more. Stacked with the latest in-vehicle technologies like a class-leading 11-inch diagonal center touchscreen and an extra-large wireless charging pad. Plus, it features wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto compatibility to make staying connected easy wherever your adventure takes you. Chevy Colorado, made for more. Learn more at Chevrolet.com/truck/Colorado. Claims based on latest competitive data.
See, you can't tell me because it was a secret.
You're
Anybody.
after he asked her to.
So anybody that's dealing with the structure of sports and then has to transition out of that, I think that anybody that's dealing with that, it's going to be kind of jarring to put your schedule back together, right? Or to feel, okay, now I know how to get up and go to work and do this and that and the other thing. There's a lot of space you're filling because, hey, for better or for worse, you talked about it, being a student athlete, you got to be, there are taskmasters who are mastering your tasks for you, right? So now you got to do it yourself. And if you're an alcoholic and a drug addict, what do you fill that space with? You fill it with alcohol and drugs a lot of times. So the combination of the free time, the no more structure, and the addiction is just crippling. And that's one of the things that I feel like we were able to at least try to share that with these student athletes at the University of Richmond, our experience with that.
Well, right. And I think community builds connection. And I think, you being a male and playing football, and I was a female and swam, even though addiction is a really strong tie between men and women, we also struggled or had different experiences, and so if we just shared one experience, then maybe not everybody would get it, but if there were two people sharing different experiences, someone can say, oh, that, that one, yes, Halloween candy.
Oh man, I'm right behind him.
And that's in the, we've talked, and we know this in 12-step meetings too. It's if you come around long enough, you're going to hear something that resonates with you, and so being able to share your experience and being able to share my experience, hopefully two people in that auditorium got something out of it, and even I said this, I said, hopefully this doesn't resonate with any of you, because that means it doesn't, nobody has an addiction or nobody is struggling like we were, but if it does, then you have two people that you can connect with, or the two people that can help you or guide you or whatever. And we were there to kind of talk about the career, finding career. And I know for me, addiction really,
there's no career with addiction, in my opinion, right? There's no, they talked about transition. There's no transition game when, all you're doing is playing with drugs and alcohol.
You're surviving, right?
Yeah.
You're just trying to survive, exist, make enough money to get your fix, to buy your drink, to do this. Exactly. It's existing and not, living. And you and I have talked about this and personally, and I think you brought it up when we were talking about, kids when they get out of college, ones that don't, have the addiction gene or struggle with drugs and alcohol, or, they work really hard to build their career. And now, now is when they can kind of
yes,
start, relaxing, or it's when they can see the fruits of their labor, and where people that, we spend those years partying, we're not putting hay in the barn for our career later, down the road. We're really focused on what's next, where can I get more? What can I do greater? How can I get higher? Whatever it is. And hi.
What's up, handsome?
So it just shifts a little bit.
Yeah. What did you think, when and then let's get to that program, we were able, first of all, to go back there and to be able to be back on campus. For me, it was, I hadn't been back in a long time. Maybe I've been back twice in, 20 some years. And there was almost to go back, it was a positive experience being back there, being with you. But I also had, I'm not going to say triggering, because I've had triggering stuff happen to me, and that wasn't one of the things, but it was very, it's hard to describe it or to put my arms around it, verbally, but it was interesting to be back there, because 90% of my time was spent drunk or chasing some kind of high. And, I feel like there was some regret around that, I guess. I felt kind of bittersweet. I feel bittersweet when I get back on that campus, because it's man, it's, I feel like it was a wasted opportunity.
I feel that.
Yeah.
Yes. I understand that. I think, there are a couple moments oh, I ran into that wall, or I hit the curb here. Like, I remember, like, you kind of get into those moments of like, oh, yes. And I feel like I can feel into what you're saying. Cause it's like, oh man, and we've talked about this too. It's like, shoulda, woulda, coulda, like, could have tried harder, should have been better. Like all of those things. And most of my time was like not remembering.
Yeah.
Yeah. And but it's also, I feel like I know what you mean. But I also, think it's like everything that we've done and everything from college on has like brought us to this experience and given us the opportunity to help people who are also sick and struggling. And as you and I've talked about this too. It's like the pandemic too, like, brought more addiction and alcohol to the surface. I mean, more people died. I don't know what the number is. It's like more people died from drugs and alcohol related incidents that first year than
actually died of COVID.
Yeah. And that's the pandemic, like, and it's increasing, and who does it affect? Like, it trickles down. I mean, it affects so many people, right? And like one person in your life gets sober, the ripple effect is so great, and it's the same thing as when people are sick and struggling, right? There's like the ripple effect, and it's like getting a hold of that and helping, one or two people, and the exponential help and growth it has, and just helping two people is so substantial. And, I don't know. I see like college. I don't know. I mean, Pete, it was so different when we were there. Like we didn't have
How about that? Let's talk about that. So we go and we talk to these student athletes, and they take us on a tour through the wellness. So, like, I mean, it was like, this is we were lucky to go to Richmond. They got a lot going on. It's you talk to anybody about the school and anybody that's familiar with it, anybody that's from maybe the Southwest or, Texas, whatever, you compare it to SMU or a campus like that. It's a smaller school, but it's just absolutely beautiful. And now the cultivation has taken place as far as, educational components related to mental health. And we walked through this wellness center, and it was unbelievable. But there wasn't anybody there. And maybe it was a Friday, and that's just my opinion. I think the money spent on that was put to very good use, but how do you get people in college and especially young athletes to shift gears and spend time looking and working on these things that they've got to generate vulnerability to go there? And it's almost impossible for athletes to go there, or let's just say it's the exact opposite of what they're supposed to be doing on the field performing.
Sure. And like you and I were both, we were college athletes, everything was structured, right? So is it structured? Is it mandatory? Is it required? Because lifting was required when I was a
swimmer.
The
mental health aspect of it.
Yes. Like we do a group meditation or we do a group yoga class. Like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what they're, I don't know. I mean, they're so structured and they have so much time and they're so committed. But like, I know for me, that was the only, we were, required to lift at this time to this time, and then we'd have practice. And then from this time to this time, I was required to be in study hall. And then, and it's like,
I don't think I'm speaking out of school, but I was talking to somebody on the administrative side when we were there, and we talked about, a sport, because it was mandatory when you and I can't believe anybody would, it would be mandatory to have me speak about health and wellness. I said at the beginning of the talk, there was nothing that was healthy or well about me when I was in college, but here I am. And I spoke to this one guy, and he said, it was a game day. And he said, it was game day, so this sport couldn't make it. And he said, but they had to go to class today, and because he was trying to say, hey, this needs to be more. There needs to be more prioritized. It needs to become more prioritized. And if you can make mental health and wellness a priority among athletes, you can start to plant that seed a lot earlier. And I'm talking about going beyond, the once and a 6-month chat with a therapist that's on staff there. I think there's more that can be done. And I think that the addiction side is something that is still vacant, as far as there is, I always give you a hard time. I would say working in that space, because Hill knows all the lingo. There is something in that space that needs to be done, Hilary.
100%. Because look, like I wouldn't have shown up at that if it wasn't mandatory when we were there.
No way was Hilary Phelps. No way was Hilary Phelps. First of all, you weren't telling Hilary Phelps what to do. First of all, back in college. Yeah, like anything extra, right?
Put wellness, mental health, or addiction on anything, and who's going to show up voluntarily? Like because one, it's hard enough to admit that you are struggling or have an issue because you're 18 years old, 19 years old, 20 years old. Like this is college. Like I thought this was a high price, club. It was the cost of admission was, swimming a couple hours a day to be able to party and live, because that's also how it's, I think, portrayed. Like the same thing with like glorifying drugs and alcohol, whether it's to celebrate or be sad or whatever it is. Like, I think there's so many things that need to like shift and change, but you're right. Like, I think for students to, be
what does he have?
I go like a blow up so they like don't need us in a way, and the one was on. So Pudding got thrown away.
He threw away a guy in a trash can on a Kidopia game.
Oh no!
Mama, look.
Hopefully,
that's a little bit of work. That's it's like an old person throwing away their dentures. So right, we've got an issue, and we're going to be searching through the trash in a little bit. Yo, one of the things we were just talking about is, and you said something that really piqued my interest. Getting sober, right? It was mandatory that I go to meetings for 20 years, but I wasn't going. It was mandatory that I stop drinking, right? For 20 years, but I didn't stop. While we have an opportunity to get these people places that they need to be, these people being athletes, right? Like you and I were, let's make it mandatory. This is an opportunity to, and of course we're a program that's promotion by attraction, but at the same time, I think it's needed to get somebody in front of, and it's going to be I don't want this to sound like I'm patting myself on the back. Let me pat you on the back. It's important to get somebody in front of you so they can hear your message. I watched you talk on Friday, and I watched a lot, if not all, of the student athletes we were talking to move forward to move up in their seats. Like the engagement, the hands were clasped, they sat up, and they were on the edge of their seats. And it wasn't like that for other parts of the program. And I think there's a human experience, but I'm just saying.
We also shared, our experience. And I think people probably looking at us were like, what?
Yeah, I know.
You're here, you're here to tell.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. It's pretty amazing. I mean, even you and I talking about it, I know, and we talk about the power of social media, putting that out there, that you and I made that visit. The feedback we got from alumni and classmates of ours, teammates of ours, I was blown away. And not only the shock that we were doing, that I was doing something positive like that, I think that was the overwhelming majority of the response I got, but also, hey, this is so awesome. This is needed. And the fact that you're able to go and do this is so important.
Right. And so when you were just talking, this is what, and this is another reason why I think it's needed. One, when we were taking the tour of the campus and they had the heart rate monitors and they watched film and they have a nutritionist on staff and they analyzed all the physical data that was coming back from their respiration rate and practice and recovery time and all of that stuff. But nowhere did I hear anything. And this isn't like a blame game, but like nowhere did I hear anything about them talking about, having meditation classes or talks like like this was first, like talks on addiction or, mental health or depression, anxiety, like those types of things. So I think so much focus because of, your athletes. And I think this is across the board. They're focused on that physical component, and it's like, it really is like a systematic, a more systematic approach of mental, physical, and I'd say spiritual, but
yeah, no. And so the program was, Hilary and I got a chance to speak. It was Friday morning. I went first. We probably had way more time than we thought we were going to have, which was fine, right? We didn't have a problem filling it. But I'm up there. The school did an incredible job. They took pictures of us, older pictures. They took our bios, and it was pretty cool. I think it was he's a good looking kid. Wow, see that? We should have had that picture up there. Really, though, we shared some of our successes because, trust me, we were going to do a good enough job of sharing our failures and all that stuff throughout our journey. But they established some credibility, I guess, like on our end. And we got up there and basically shared our experience, what happened, especially what happened in school, and what we had to do to get right, and what we're doing now to stay right. And I saw, just like I saw when you were speaking, I definitely saw, it was amazing to see the engagement we got. I mentioned that earlier with you, and I said, of course, you were like good cop. You came behind me and you were like, hopefully I'm not talking to anyone. And I was like, I'm talking to, I was like, there's 2 people in here who know at least. And then, Hilary comes by, like looking all beautiful after me. She's like, hopefully it's none of you. And then afterwards we got done and the whole friggin' swim team was huddled around you. Like you were their coach. Right? All these girls asking you questions. But I thought, by the way, that was one of the coolest parts of the event. One of the most fucked up parts of the event was that there was a goddamn tornado. Pardon my language. But I'm sitting there talking, and R.D. Montgomery, who welcomed us back to campus, as I'm talking, I see him start to move around, and he's talking to different people, like on the administrative side, outside of the crowd of student athletes that we're talking to. And then he comes up on the stage and he starts talking to Hilary. And I'm thinking, okay, I gotta wrap this up. Yeah. So anybody that's speaking like that, and there's all sorts of you feel the commotion if you've done it once or twice. Like, okay, something's happening here. And I'm like, oh my God, is he gonna come up and be like, all right, Pete, that's enough of your time. I was like, this is unheard of. So I did my part to wrap it up. And then I got done and he goes, yeah, okay, there's a tornado. We're going to have to move to a different space of campus. I was like, oh my gosh, or a tornado warning, I should say. And then we got to walk through the bowels. And by the way,
of glass was why they moved us.
Yeah.
In this beautiful auditorium with glass. And
Millheiser Gym, right? Yeah, I think it was
new.
Yeah, it was incredible. I mean, the university and the work that they've done, I mean, it was always beautiful, but it's what a special place. Of course, I speak from, a place where I'm definitely partial to this school, but it was just so beautiful. And so then we walked through the I guess you would say the annals of the university, right? I mean, we were in locker rooms and areas that I know I never saw, and it's not the biggest place, right? In the athletic department. And we came out, I guess, by I forget what portion of it was. We were all the way down in the belly of the University of Richmond's athletic department, and then it was Hilary's turn to speak. I was like, good luck.
The racquetball courts and the tornado shelter. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, good luck, Hill. And then you said, hey, it's going to be like a meeting. It's going to be like an AA meeting. I'm going to get up here, and it was awesome. And everybody was still there and everybody was still captivated. What was the message that you tried to convey as you looked out to almost younger versions of you? It was basically like one of those, a letter to your younger self. What were you trying to get across to those young student athletes?
Yeah, I mean, look, and I've shared this on your podcast and before, it was I grew up, even though I was the fastest in the country at one point.
I always say, I'm like, Hilary, why do you bury this lead? You were the best swimmer in the country. And I said, start telling people you were the best in the world. You could, Pete, I wasn't. I'm like, it doesn't matter. Yeah, leave it from one PR person to another. Go ahead. Yeah.
And I was the fastest and I got straight A's, and there was still something inside of me that never felt good enough, good enough, smart enough, funny enough, nothing. And it didn't matter. And I was already the best, but there was something like this empty hole inside of me. And I tried to fill it with drugs and alcohol, with toxic relationships, with, shopping, all of the thing, because I was talking to the women, you know, like, 'cause that is like,
I don't think there's enough people like you talking to young women and in general, especially in athletics.
Thank you. I mean, yeah, like these things are normal. I mean, not normal, but like you're not alone, because I always felt like I was alone, or there was something wrong, or I couldn't figure it out, or why is this happening to me? And nobody was talking about it. My parents didn't understand it because what experience do they have? They didn't have experience with it, you know? So it's like, you're fine. Like, put some dirt on. I mean, that was kind of our generation. Like, and not, I love my, you know, my, it's not like, but, and so for me, it was like trial and error. Let's see what works to quiet the voice or numb it or whatever it is. And that's when I really got heavy into, you know, drugs and alcohol, because it was like, I don't know what to do here, but this seems to be the answer. And so I wanted girls to know that, like, if these are behaviors that they're seeing, or these are, you know, ways that they're feeling, like, and this is how you're coping, there's a solution. You know, and we have a solution, or we have at least some, you know, resources to steer you towards.
What did you think? What do you think about people who say, because there's a hard charge, like, what do I want to say? I just want to, there's a hardcore approach to athletics in college, but there's also that side that says, okay, work hard, play hard. What do you say, or I guess, what are your thoughts on, you can almost hide out, like we talked about earlier. You almost fit in as an alcoholic, or especially as an alcoholic in college, or nowadays, like a real excessive, like, weed smoker. But, you know, you're quieting the voice in your head, or trying to fill the hole in your soul if you're me. But everybody else, and by the way, you just, all you know is it feels good, right? I mean, you really don't even know. I didn't really know that there was like a, you know, I felt so good, and it didn't feel like that for everybody else, but it was normal. So kind of, what do you say to that? Like, hey, like, how do people kind of, you know, find that place to go when it's like, okay, like, we're working hard and we're partying hard. Like, how do you find the avenue, like, or create the avenue for help for student athletes that really don't know what they are?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way you create an avenue like that is just giving them exposure to people like us who are talking about it, right? Because if you don't know what you don't know, right? And if we're constantly told, like, work hard, play hard, this is just what you do. You go out on Thursday, Friday nights, like, especially if you're impressionable, or you want to be liked, or whatever that is, you know, you're going to kind of go, I went along with it. Other people are going to go along with it. And so it's getting other people in front of them to say, like, we felt the same. Looking back, it's not, you know, it's not normal, or it's okay. It's okay not to be okay. You know, it's a long road. I mean, I don't know. What do you tell it? What do you say?
Well, I mean, I think what you said nailed it. I loved your answer. Like, just exposure to the solution, I think, is the beginning of fighting that battle. Having people, you know, that are tuned into recovery, talking to them about their experience, strength, and hope, I think can really, that's all you can do. Because I had to seek it out, or not seek it out, but all of my experience was either through personal experience, like I always talk about my buddy Peter Flick, who got sober when he was 18. I knew that, and my brother struggled with it, but I knew that when they went to where they were supposed to go, there was an answer. They did better, and I knew from TV shows. You know, and maybe a lecture or two that I got over the course of high school and college. And that was all, you know. And when I talk about this, I'm talking about TV shows about, you know, the comeback, you know, the GOAT, the Earl Monroe story that was on HBO. I love that shit. You know, he was a basketball player who got sober. And, you know, or I remember watching a Sports Century Classic on ESPN about Dennis Eckersley, who got sober. And by the way, his publicist won't let him go on this podcast, which is another story. She actually, I won't say that she won't let him go, but she said Dennis can't do it. Dennis, I want to have you on here. But that was a huge reason why I remember trying to get sober watching the freaking Dennis Eckersley Sports Century Classic over and over again, crying at my parents' house when I couldn't stop drinking. You know, and so there is an attraction to that, I think, even if you're in the throes of addiction, or if you're trying to find yourself, to those messages.
Yeah, I mean, I used to drink vodka and watch When a Man Loves a Woman, which is like,
yeah,
because it's a story about an addict and she gets sober. But I also think, and I lost my train of thought.
Well, what I was saying too, just real quick to sweep in, it's, you know, those messages, you know, it's so rare. I mean, by the time I'm watching these documentaries or they found me, I didn't find them. So it's important that we put a situation or something in place where these programs find these student athletes. They're not going to look for them, you know, but it's got to, you know, it's almost like it's just as similar as me flicking around the television set and coming across that movie, The GOAT, or the Dennis Eckersley sports-centric classic, as to, okay, something is now put in your program, in your life, that is, like we said, you know, was mandatory. And what were you going to say? I cut you off.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, because I also was like, I'm too young to have a problem. This is college. This is just what people do. And so we keep going back to that. Like, it's easy to be buried in that space, right? It's easy to get lost in the crowd in college because everybody's doing it. What I didn't understand and what I later came to realize is that, you know, when we put alcohol in our body, it becomes like walking pneumonia. Like, my hangover is not like my college roommates that had 2 beers the night before and I had 15 or whatever it was. You know what I mean? Like, it's not the same, but like,
so you mean the recovery? I love this. So the way you felt after having 15 beers was like a regular human having walking pneumonia. And you're just you're just walking around, right? Like, yeah, no big deal.
Like, this is just a hangover. And it's like, no, this isn't a hangover. People with hangovers, maybe, I don't know what a regular hangover is, but like, you know, maybe they have a little bit of a headache. Maybe they drink a little bit more water, but like, they're not so incapacitated that they can't like function or get out of bed or like, you know what I mean? But they have to. And I just think it's a different.
My man Murph says if he woke up today, he's sober, 6 years or something. He says if he woke up today feeling the way he did every day when he woke up with a hangover, he would call 911. You know, if you woke up today feeling the way you did when you were in the grips of alcohol and drug addiction, you would be like, I have to go to the hospital. Something is very wrong with me. And it was just another day at the office.
Yeah, 100. Like, we talked about this in Richmond, that I used to sit in the shower and I get up in the morning. You know, this is once I transitioned into the work life, into career, or into job. I should be not a career. Like, I'd sit in the shower and I would like have my head in my knees and wrap my arms around and just like my kidneys hurt so bad from all of the toxins and alcohol that was just going through my body, that I was like, I mean, it was like knives stabbing in the side of my back. And I was like, I can't do this anymore, like, every single morning. And it was like, that's not normal.
But I will tell you this, you kept doing it. And I remember I read a book about the Oakland Raiders, who were like work hard, play hard. The organization was in the 70s and the 80s. And there was a wide receiver, Dave Casper, and he had like we're talking about, a real hard night the night before, like many beers, probably some drugs, and he's on the training table the day before, you know, they have a game, so he's hungover, they're about to play a game, and somebody that saw him out the night before was like, oh man, Casper, like, I can't even believe you're going to play. I saw you last night, and now I see you, you're in pretty bad shape. And he was like, you got to teach your body who's boss. And that was the mindset that I worked with, right? I mean, for so long I was like, I'm going to be a Raider. I'm going to teach my body who's boss. And by the very end, I wasn't a Raider. I was a piece of shit, you know. And because I was sick, you know. Yeah. I was an addict who was a bad person. I wasn't a bad person who was an addict, and that's what had happened to me. I was a bad person because of addiction. So what would you say? Because I'll let you go get the train in about 10 minutes here. What would you say to somebody? What would you say just to give people, because you and I were there, we've talked about it, but you know, odds are people that are listening to this, you know, have no clue what went on in that session. What do you say to younger athletes, student athletes, or if there's a parent of a student athlete out there, especially that's a female, you know, about your experience and about the availability and about the opportunity to seek out this mental health, or if they're feeling some kind of way, you know, where to go, what to do?
I don't know. I mean, I think, right, like, it's the message, the messenger, and the timing, right? So nobody's going to hear it until they're ready to hear it. But if you keep presenting opportunities for education and learning and exposure, then at some point it's gonna resonate with at least one person, right? And I think you and I both agree, like, one person does change the world. Like, one person getting sober helps another. It's a trickle down effect. So I don't know. I mean, it's also like, It's tough, right? Like I'm a parent, like asking questions, like
you spoke to this group. What did you feel was one of the more impactful messages or things that you shared that you felt like we all have those moments when you see their eyes kind of like, oh,
I don't know. You were watching them. I went into like a speaking blackout. Like what, I don't know what I said. What did you see? What did they resonate with? I mean, I don't know. Like I think, and this goes back to like the importance, I think, of experience. It's like storytelling. Storytelling is what resonates, right? And
100%. We were not talking at them or really to them. We were just talking with them.
Right. Like putting stats up, like saying, did you know more people died from this and this? Like we're not at a conference or a convention. Like we're trying to like affect change or at least be heard in a positive way. Right. And so I think the fact that we were able to do it from a storytelling perspective, all true, but like, this is our experience. Right. And this is how people learn, is by hearing other people's experience and resonating, something in that resonating. So I think it's like the delivery is so important, right? And the messenger is so important. And we laugh about this, but we were like, we're seasoned. We're not old. We're not young, but like we both over a decade. We're established in our careers, like we came out alive, like we're okay. But like, there were some moments that we weren't sure about, and like sharing those things and being like, this is what it was like. This is what happened to affect the change. And this is what it's like now. Right. Like that's so powerful. And people being like, wow. And maybe that sticks with somebody, or maybe 5 years down the road, they're in, living with a roommate in New York, and the roommate comes to them and says, hey, I'm struggling. And they're like, hey, you know what? I heard this. Like, you just never know how.
Or you go to your roommate and you go, I think that those people that spoke at our college were right. Like, I think I might have this issue. Because that's kind of what, or your roommate talks to you and says, I think you have this wrong with you.
Right. Or if it's not presented, or people aren't talking actively about, talking about addiction and struggles and mental health and mental wellness, if we're not talking about it, then you don't know what you don't know. Right. And so I'm saying like, no, like you lived in New York, you had a roommate, like imagine your roommate coming to you saying like, hey, I think I'm struggling. Have you not had a talk at Richmond? You'd be like, I don't know what to tell you, man. Like Google it. It's like, oh, actually we heard this conversation with these two former, like, this is what they did. Maybe you should look into rehab. Like, even though I knew about rehab, I didn't even know where to begin. Like you just Google like rehab's close to me. Like I just didn't know, and so just having information readily accessible and available to people is really helpful.
And I want to talk about sharing the message too, real quick before we wrap this up. So this is just how incredible of a person Hilary is. So we get done and there are two people on campus that are there. So, and this is another, I mean, it's funny, but it speaks to the need, or the lack thereof, I guess, the willingness of folks that are younger to get sober. There are two people on campus that I can tell you, but were like in sobriety I'm sure there's more than that. Right. But there were two people who we were going to meet with that were AA or 12-step based. And boy, Hilary was going to find them. We're walking around the athletic department, oh my gosh. Let's say the guy's name was Dominic. I don't want to say his name. We have to find Dominic. I'm texting with Dominic right now. He's in this room in the wellness center. Room 204. Does anybody know where 204 was? And so we're walking around with RD. We were doing Hilary, we were all over the place, and I was talking to RD, and you're like, I'll get with you guys in a little bit. I'm gonna find Dominic.
Stay here. I'm gonna go find this group.
So, but this is like the beauty of you and I carrying the message. You were on fire to meet two people who wanted to meet with you, and that because us, yes, but with us, but yes, and we were excited. And the point is, years ago, as it was told to me, it was like, you try to talk to somebody about like, hey, you should get sober and yada, yada. But there's people who actually want it. And, the people who wanted to talk sobriety. And these weren't people with 1 or 2 days. They were people with time that wanted to share with somebody else in the Richmond community their stories of sobriety. And it was awesome. But I guess what I'm getting at is
right? Because they
Yeah.
also wanted questions. They're like, we need to do this. Like, do you guys have any organizational like ideas on how that we can better ... Like, they were also really eager. I mean, it was like a really beautiful, it was like a small.
And part of the mission is, and I'm gonna give you credit on this because I just am. You know, if it's an arena of 20,000 people, or if it's a room of 1 or 2, it doesn't matter. You know, carrying the message is just about carrying the message, and it's not a results-based deal, or it's not about results as far as how many people are going to be there or whatever. It's just about, hey, here's the message, we want to bring it. And I think it's that type of passion and fire that brought us back to campus, and I hope will continue to move us throughout, right, different places in the country, carrying this message.
Right. I mean, because to your point, like, it doesn't matter if it's 2 people in a room or 200 people in a room, or 2,000 people in a room, because it's one person. And we talk about this too in the program. It's like, it's a family disease. It affects everybody. One addict it doesn't stop, and I was like this too. Well, this doesn't affect anybody else but me, but it does. It affects my parents, my brother, my sister, my friends, if you're a mother, your child, I mean, it affects everybody. So literally one person getting help is huge.
By the way, we all know Michael was a great swimmer. I always think Hilary or Whitney doesn't get the credit she deserves. Whitney, your sister at UNLV, she was one of the best, right?
Yeah, she was 3rd in the world at 14. She was incredible. Her time would have won Olympics in 96.
All right, so I always feel like Whitney needs some credit here. All right,
she needs some badass. She's the badass of the Phelps clan for sure.
One more question. What happened to the pitcher of water at dinner? Did you knock it off the table? You try to act, I mean, we're at dinner, right? Hilary took me out to dinner for my sober anniversary. It was awesome. And we're sitting there eating, and the next thing you know, it's smashed. The worst case scenario as a patron. A glass on your table hits the ground, and people scramble. Did you knock it off?
I didn't think so. I didn't touch it. It was energy. That was really weird. Yeah, I was like, did I do that?
I got your back. I was like, she did not do this.
I was like, oh my gosh. It was but it was really loud. Yeah, it was one of those very embarrassing moments of like, I'm gonna be sober. Like,
actually,
right?
but what do? I took the opportunity to move us to a better table. I was like, yeah, you know what? We're gonna go down here. Yeah. Thank you, Hilary. I appreciate it.
Have a good day. Later.
You too. Bye-bye. Thanks so much for listening to the Payoff with Pete. Once again, I'm Pete Souza. And of course, we are part of the Rogue Media Network. All kinds of good podcasts you can find at roguemedianetwork.com. And of course, you can find this podcast and all those other ones wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, other spots like that.
This has been a Rogue Media podcast.
Are you a podcaster? Let's talk podcast hosting. Are you tired of your current podcast host? Need real support in a community that gets it? At Rogue Media Network, we offer top-tier podcast hosting services to help you thrive. From hosting and distribution to dedicated support, we've got you covered. Starting as low as $25 a month. Join our community of passionate podcasters today. Contact us at hello@roguemedianetwork.com.